Let's go ahead and get started today. Brian and I are sharing our two sessions. We will do session 2 and session 4. We will divvy it up a bit. I'll take the majority of this one this morning and let Brian start out with introduction and his in as to why, where he became concerned about climate change.
Great. So, Ken will probably mention this, but what you're seeing on the screen will be made available to you. There'll be an online link, which is really cool. I think it's what's called the Prezi system.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have Prezi on your computer. If you have this link, you get to see it as a like everything that we have embedded in it. There's more up here than what we're going to do with you. I will say that part of this was created because I work for Metro, and I brought in part of that in case we have some questions, but there's more up here that Brian and I are going to do.
So we thought we'd first kind of start with our story of kind of like, who we are and why are we here. I still think of that vice presidential debate with Admiral James Stockdale, where he was debating Dan Quayle and Al Gore, and he gets up on the stage and he looked really lost. He's like, who am I? Why am I here? So I was trying to draw a presentation of who am I? Why am I here? As opposed to someone else. Well, Ken and I know each other through the Climate Reality Project, which was a group that was started by Al Gore over 12 years ago. Folks think of Al Gore with climate change, and Al Gore did his film An Inconvenient Truth, and also he won a Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts for educating about climate change. So what he did is he took his proceeds from the Nobel Peace Prize and Inconvenient Truth and put it in this organization called the Climate Reality Project. And what the Climate Reality Project does is Al Gore does this like 3 times a year. He does a training with over 1,000 people. He does them in the US, and he also does them, I think the next one's in Tokyo. And he trains people to give presentations, how he gives presentations, and you get his massive slide deck of over 600 slides here too. We're not going to give you all 600 slides here today. Just a few that are available to the public here. But that's what we're both involved with the Portland chapter. So that's how Ken and I got to know each other. And Ken's going to give you his story here in a moment. So just to share a little bit about myself. And I love how Ken put this together. I'm still using that antiquated technology called PowerPoint.
Yes.
And Keynote. I guess this is kind of the future now with Prezi.
I do want to say that some of the twisting and turning here, that will be for the entire presentation. It's just going to be for the introduction. So, if it starts to make you sick, just close your eyes until the next slide.
So, a number of folks have been asking me, well, who are you and why are you here? And so I pride myself now on being a climate change organizer. I'm involved with different organizations, lobbying and speaking about it, and actually interacting with folks, trying to push climate change action, just push this ball down the road. And I'll get a little more about what groups I'm involved with later on. I'm originally from this place. Anybody been to St. Louis before? Yeah, I grew up about a mile from the Mississippi, and I kind of slide a bit and talk about growing up there. I just always loved spending time in nature. And that's one of the things I'm going to talk about today too. I think that's one thing that gives us hope on climate change, is spending time in the outdoors and getting that rejuvenation, because we know that climate change can be such a heavy subject. So for me, it was really spending time in the outdoors that I wanted to do something kind of nature-oriented with my life. So I ended up working at this place for 25 years. Anybody been there? The Crater Lake?
Yeah.
You tried?
It's been socked in.
I know, it's not the easiest place to visit. Half the time of the winter it's socked in, a number of times in summer, but keep trying. I know from Portland it's like a 5-hour drive to get down. It's way southern Oregon, about a half an hour north of the California border. So it's, or an hour from the California border. So it's be a drive away from here too. But that's where I was at for 25 years, from like 1992 to 2017. And this is a picture taken of me 27 years ago. After my first summer at Crater Lake. I haven't changed a bit, have I?
You had beard.
Yeah, I had the beard, yeah. I think I've gotten better looking over the years, being a park ranger. So I got to do all kinds of things as a park ranger. I was what's called an interpretive park ranger, where I gave all kinds of ranger talks. I gave an evening program which was on climate change. I was a step-on tour when bus tours came, and I narrated the trolley tours, did sunset guided hikes, a lodge talk, historical talk, you name it. And I also got to narrate the boat tours on Crater Lake there also. Crater Lake, some of the things that's really unique about it, deepest lake in the United States, almost 2,000 feet deep, and also one of the cleanest and clearest bodies of water in the world. And I would actually show this on a boat tour. I would stop the boat, open the side hatch, scoop my water bottle, and drink it right in front of the passengers. And as far as I can tell, there's no side effects. But I had this really great connection with this park. And how does Crater Lake get its water? It's basically its own watershed. It's all fed by snow and rain. There's no outside rivers or streams feeding the lake. It's all snow and rain from the sky. And we get a tremendous amount of snow. Anybody know how much snow we get there? Total accumulation? It's about 520 inches. When you average it out over many years, 520 inches. Total accumulation. On the ground, it'd be like, maybe 10 to 15 feet if you're riding like early May, late April there. But we get a lot of snow. So when you're driving the park in early May, you're typically driving through walls of snow to get up to the worst of the rim. The 520 inches, 10 to 12 feet of snow on the ground, we get enough snow, it almost buries our 4-story lodge in the park. So we get a lot of snow there in the park. Now I say 520 inches, but we noticed something interesting going on over the years at Crater Lake. That average is averaged out again over many years, but when we break it down by decade, we notice something interesting. Yeah, it went up in the 1930s and 40s, but it's been going down in the decades. And this decade's been dismal. 2 years ago was great, 578 inches of snow, and we had a wonderful snowpack. But overall, this decade's been dismal. 354 inches of snow. And then a couple of years, 2015, which I'll be talking about a lot, we didn't even break 200 inches of snow. Our snowpack did not even get below 6,000 feet. And more recently, last winter we were about 100 inches below normal. So that was considered to be pretty good. But 2 winters ago, 333. So we've been noticing a downward trend in our snowpack, which can actually be grafted out. And this is not something that's just hypothetical. I've seen it with my own eyes. Here, this is 2012 is a good snowpack year, and taken from that same spot on that same day, 2015, hardly any snow in the park. So this is something I've actually seen with my own eyes. So one of the things that I've noticed is that, just looking out my dining room window at my house, is that I'm noticing that it has rained more and snowed less in the months of May and June and September and October. So that's something I noticed with my own eyes, being able to work there for 25 years. So what's interesting is that our winters, we've noticed in the park, have gotten shorter, warmer, and less snowy. So what does that do for fire season?
It's worse.
Yeah. On the flip side, the fire season's gotten longer, hotter, drier, and more intense. So 2015, that same year we got less than 200 inches of snow in the park. We had our biggest forest fire in our park's history. Over 20,000 acres that burned in 2015. And then in 2017, so the last few years I was working there, it just got so bad with the smoke. So in 2017, it wasn't just fires outside of the park. It was fires up the Northwest, and it was really smoky. And somebody I was talking to that lived in Hood River, who's a friend from, we were talking about the smoke in Hood River, Eagle Creek fire. It was so smoky in the Northwest that it was really hard to go outside and want to do much of any kind of recreation or work that you have to do. So my wife and I shared a car, and we still share a car. And so I was working at Crater Lake. I thought, well, I would go back home for the weekend, drive up there, drop off the car, have a nice weekend with her, and then fly back. And at that time, there was a commercial flight from Portland down to Klamath Falls. And I thought, good, I'll finally be able to see Crater Lake from the air. I'm so tired. I was so tired of hearing friends and family brag about how being able to see Crater Lake from a commercial flight. Well, it was so smoky, and this is what I saw when I flew over. I could barely see it with all of the smoke. And we know this, is that as our temperatures have gotten warmer with climate change, the number of fires and the number of large fires have increased over the years. So getting back to 2015, what happened is that we had that large fire in the northwest corner of the park. And to what I'm sure you've heard the term fight fire with fire. So our fire crew said the road is a natural break, but we're going to try to increase that break to contain this fire. So what they did is they do what's called back burning, where they set these trees on fire to contain that fire. Well, this picture on the right went viral. Do you think people want a vacation at such a place? It looks like vacationing in the gates of hell, doesn't it? And so people are canceling their vacation left and right. They're calling, my friends and family are calling me, are you okay? Seeing this picture here. And then also when it's really smoky, people call up the park and say, we planned this big family vacation. My mom's coming, my kids are coming. They've got asthma. Should they come? And I have to say, well, if the smoke is blowing the wrong way, it's not going to be healthy. And when people cancel their vacation, so for me, this is what happens with climate change also, is that when people cancel their vacations, that has an impact on the Oregon economy. That meant the local campgrounds, those local mom and pop campgrounds, they're not getting much business. Those local mom and pop stores where people buy their goods and souvenirs, they're not getting any business. Gas stations, restaurants. And so when we have big fires in the park that are exacerbated by climate change here in Oregon, that is a big impact on our economy. And that's one of the reasons why I work on this issue too, is just the economic and hardship that it causes for people. So that's one of the reasons that brought me here today. So that's basically my story. So Ken, if you want to take it from here. So this is how I've always tried to explain it to my audiences in national parks or audiences in the general public, is what's our body temperature?
What's that, what?
What's our body temperature?
98.6.
Yeah, so we all kind of know that because when we're not feeling well, one of the first things we do is grab a thermometer. What's going on with my body here? So what we've done with our planet is we've increased this temperature by a degree Fahrenheit, which sounds laughable because all of us know when we wake up in the morning it's kind of cool and the temperature can go up to about 10 to 20 degrees in a day. So audience here a degree and they start chuckling because they've experienced these 10 to 20 degrees in one day. But I always ask an audience, what's your body temperature? And then I say, well, so when our body temperature is, if your body temperature is at 99, 100, like today, you maybe not think about coming. You'd reach the point where if you're at 101, 102, you're checking yourself into a hospital. Well, it's the same thing with the planet. We notice that when our body temperature goes up about a degree, and the planet notices it too when it goes up a degree. So it's just that little bit of a degree can make a difference of how much ice you have, open water you have, changing weather systems. So just a little degree makes a big difference. And as far as how much, and so now I think one of the big debates you'll hear in the media is that people will say, well, how much of this is human caused? And the current climate change scientists will tell you it's well over 100% and then some. We're way overwhelming the natural cycles. And there's natural things that do cause the climate to change, such as the sun. Well, the sun has an alibi because actually the sun rays over the last few decades have gotten a little weaker. Volcanoes. As Ken said, we're increasing. We have 100 times more carbon dioxide that we're putting into our air supply than volcanoes do. Oceans. Well, oceans basically what they do is they just transfer heat. Sometimes they absorb more, sometimes they release. So oceans just kind of shift around. So we know it's not oceans. So scientists, what they first do is look at all the natural things that cause climate change, and all of them have alibis. The only thing that can really cause what's going on right now is the human contribution of increasing the carbon dioxide. That answers your question here.
Yes.
So great job there, and I always learn so much also. We think oftentimes human beings, we get caught up on thinking singularly on trying to solve climate change, and it's really trying to think of this differently, systematically. But what I hope to share with you today is just kind of actions that you can take, and actions that I've done that hopefully can maybe spur you on in solving climate change here also. And one of the first things I want to talk about is, and I've got a number of these, and we'll see all what I get here today, is at the top of my list is basically just talking about it with your family. And I know you may have family members that are just opposed to accepting the science and reality of climate change, obviously friends, maybe people you've worked with, neighbors, but it's so important that you talk about it. And I was thinking about how do you talk about it? And, there's a book I read 7 years ago that I was thinking about here today, and it's by Joe Rome. I'm an energy expert. It's called Language Intelligence, Lessons on Persuasion from Jesus, Shakespeare, Lincoln, and Lady Gaga. Just some of the best communicators in human history and how they did it. And when you think about Jesus, when he was asked those really tough questions, well, who gets into heaven? That kind of thing, he immediately went into a story. And too often with climate change, what have we done when that person disagrees with you? Oh no, climate change is real. We have increased the CO2 in our atmosphere, and 97% of scientists say it's real. We immediately start going into this scientific talk, and you lost people. Because I heard communications expert George Marshall, not the American World War II general, but George Marshall from Great Britain say that science does not persuade people. It's the stories they hear from the people they trust. So you've got a lot of credibility with your own family and friends and coworkers, and if you're a pastor, your own conversation. And I got this picture up with my dad, because if you would have talked to my dad over 10 years ago, he'd be telling you, climate change ain't real, it's not human cause. He'd give you all these litany of why it's not happening. And he knew what I was doing. He knew I was interested in the subject. He knew I was interested in pursuing something with it. And, you're talking about climate change again, And I kind of gave up to talking to him about it, but I was going to pursue my path of doing something about it. And so as I was pursuing this path, I don't want to get too long-winded in the story here. So I was gathering with a friend 10 years ago, because I knew I didn't want to be a ranger forever. I wanted to pursue this path of climate change. And this friend's really drilling me. What do you want to do, Brian? And I'm like, okay, fine. If I could do anything, I like to be the climate change comedian. And she immediately fell off her chill and said, why don't you grab the website to me and do it? And so I did it. And so well, what do you do if you're a comedian then? Well, you gotta do something funny. So I did a funny video with my wife, my girlfriend at the time. Then I did it with my mom. And then I did it with my wife and my mom. They play their musical instruments. My mom's a pianist and my wife's a violinist. And I'm trying to promote them as they promoted me. And so then we got to, this was like 4 years ago, we got to the fourth video. And my dad said, I'm tired of being the cameraman. I want to be in your next video. And I'm like, oh my God, what are you going to talk about? And then I thought, well, my dad's shifted his position. And so I interviewed him, and that is on the Prezi deck. Is it buried in there? Were you able to find it, get it in there? Ken, the video of my dad? We're not going to play it right now, but I'm just saying in a general sense.
We can get it in there.
Yeah, we can get it in there. So I did a story of my dad, but it took years and part of it was me following my passion. And he says in the video, it's from me talking about my stories of discovering this in the national park. So it's really stories. And I heard somebody say research too, a scientist say that research shows that showing research doesn't work. It's stories, it's not just telling people, because we do want to hit people over the head with the science of climate change, but it's really the stories how it's impacted us and people we know. So talk about it with your congregation. When I lived in St. Louis, I moved to Portland about 2.5 years ago, but I had the great experience that I got to talk about it in different churches in St. Louis, primarily Presbyterian churches, but I talked to so many different churches during their Sunday morning Bible class that my wife and I were even jokingly calling it, I was doing climate change church, that I was talking to so many different churches, but there was a need for churches to hear it, and there still is, and for congregations. So talk to churches, talk to your congregation about it, especially if you're a pastor. And the big concern is that as Americans, we are not talking about it. The Yale University and George Mason, they put out this survey of 3 years ago when they interviewed Americans about, are you talking about climate change? And the big thing that came back to them is that as Americans, no, we're not talking about it. 1 in 5 Americans hear people they know talk about climate change only about once a month. And underneath that it says, only 1 in 4 Americans never hear it discussed. So a lot of people, it's not happening in our everyday conversations and with our family, it's still not being discussed. Now, this was 3 years ago, and hopefully this is going up little by little, but this was a groundbreaking study, is that people are not talking about this subject. It would even say that 7 in 10 Americans rarely or never discuss climate change with family and friends. Now, I know that we all hear that, I always heard this in my family, and I've heard this in your family too, that it's not polite to talk about politics and religion with family and friends, and probably a lot of people would add climate change in there too, but it's one of those subjects that really does need to be discussed if we're going to make progress on this issue. And evangelical Christian, Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, who's a climate scientist, I really like what she said. She said this in basically a number of her talks now, and she did a TED Talk on this. She said, if we don't talk about climate change, why would we care? And if we don't care, why would we act? So it really does start with a conversation. And again, keeping it around stories of how it's impacted you, or maybe your story of attending here. I've had, this year so far, I've had 2 friends, one in Hamburg, Iowa, with the flooding they had this spring. He had his house totally destroyed. And I just had a friend just a few days ago in Ocracoke, North Carolina. That hurricane, Dorian, just went right over that. I went over there, and she got, I mean, they live in Ocracoke. They get out there, they get hurricanes almost every year, but never to the extent of this damage. And so I had 2 of my friends. So folks, you may know somebody that's been damaged by this, and that's another story you can share too. That it's the personal stories that can really help influence people here too. And so if you're anybody familiar with this group, Interfaith Power Life, amazing group. I've known about them for about a good 7 years now, especially when I was in St. Louis. And there's all kinds of denominations that are involved with them. And so Mennonites are also involved with them too. And this is a great way to find out what other congregations are doing about it. They were used to encourage, and still they do this. They would do around February each year, on February 14th, a national preaching day on climate change, getting pastors and clergy to talk about climate change. But this is a great way to exchange information about this too. If you're a pastor or member of a congregation, I work closely with them in St. Louis and spoke to churches, invitations from members of Interfaith Power and Life.
And that just reminds me that the Illinois Interfaith Power and Life person is a Mennonite pastor. It's called Faith in Place, so the Mennonites are involved with it. And it's by state.
By state.
Mostly, right? I mean, there's an Oregon Power and Life.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's state, and maybe in some areas it could be by city also.
Yeah, right. There is a DC area.
DC area.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first one, is talking about it. And Ken, I'm not seeing it go back. I'll just go to the next one here.
Yeah, there you go.
And for me, I think it's so important to spend time in nature. And this is such a blessing to be with you guys, because I can bring in some of the spirituality too that I can't necessarily give to other groups in other venues. Here's just spending the time in nature. One of the reasons I'm in front of you today is because I grew up only a couple miles from the Mississippi in St. Louis, and I just love going to those parks and hiking and spending time in nature. And it just had a huge impact on my life. I just knew for the rest of my life I did not want to spend my life working in an office. Just, I didn't have a connection to working outside, working in the outdoors, and that's what kind of led me to be a park ranger. But also, given us a lot of thought over the years, I really tried to collect some spiritual quotes on this to keep me going. And I like this quote by E.B. White. Who's E.B. White? Anyone know? Author of Charlotte's Web, Stuart Little. I just love this quote, folks, that E.B. White said, "I'm torn each day between a desire to save the world and an inclination to savor it. It makes it hard to plan a day. But if we forget to savor the world, what possible reason do we have for saving it? In a way, savoring must come first." And I want to really thank, I made sure I thank the individual, I want to thank Doug, because hopefully during these breaks, folks have been going out on nature walks here, going to the beach, just taking time and really absorbing that nature. This has been the most connected nature climate conference I've ever been to. I've had others where we're just in a classroom all day with no windows, and you just want to climb the wall. It's like, what are we protecting, folks? And so, yeah, it is so important to be out in the nature itself, and it's so glad that we've got this built in this conference here. Something else that's kept me going is Anne Frank. You know, was it 13 unfortunately when she left us? But she, just in her diaries, is way wise beyond her years. I love this quote that she said too, that the best remedy for those who are afraid, lonely, or unhappy is to go outside, where they can be quiet with the nature heavens of God. Because only then is life as it should be, among the simple beauty of nature. I bridged that quote a little bit. But yeah, just the importance of being outside and rejuvenating ourselves too, because as we know from this morning, this can be a heavy subject here too. And I'm sure we've all met people too. It's like there's such downers, and you just want to say, man, you need to go outside and get some fresh air. Hear you. And all my time at Crater Lake, I used to love to hike on top of these different mountain peaks. And it reminded me of this Bible verse here too. That there's so many beautiful passages in the Bible and passages that Doug has shared with us too. That the earth is the Lord's and all of its fullness. Just such an amazing, beautiful, fabulous creation that we've been blessed with. When I worked at Crater Lake, we're not really close to any city lights. We had this incredible view of the stars at night on a moonless night. And he used to remind me of this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That something should remind us more than once of the great things in this universe are the things that we never see. You walk out at night and look up at the beautiful stars that they bedeck the heavens, swinging like lanterns of eternity, and you think you can see all. Oh no, you can never see the law of gravitation that holds them there. Just love this quote from Dr. King. I think that was the last from that section there. So the next one I have here is, and this is something I've kind of stumbled across here, is that, man, it is so important to vote. If you want to make change on this issue or the issues that you care about, you got to vote. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm not here to tell you how to vote, who to vote for. You just got to vote. That's just the simple message right there. And what really crystallized it for me was Nathaniel Stinnett. He spoke on a Citizens Climate Lobby monthly call in June of last year. He comes from a group called the Environmental Voter Project. And this is online, this is on YouTube. And he asked, why can't we consistently act strong environmental policy? Or I consider myself more pragmatic environmental policy. He has progressive, but strong environmental policy. What's wrong? What's happening? Why we can't do this compared to some other issues here? Well, what we've seen so far, and hopefully this will change, is that likely voters do not prioritize environmental issues. So in the 2016 election, they asked voters, what's your highest priority as far as voting? And typically what you hear about is terrorism, national security. Obviously, we want to have a safe country. Economy, jobs, immigration, healthcare. These are all important issues. But look where climate change and the environment was. This was in 2016.
That's going to change.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to change.
That'll change now.
Hopefully it's going to change. And this is what we're here to have that conversation. But in the last election, this is how voters prioritized it. Only about 4%. So this is really what really was just blew me away. What Nathaniel Stinnett talked about is that when campaigns, when they're thinking about who are they trying to target, they poll likely voters. They're not really interested in people that don't vote. It's the voters that get them into office, so therefore, when they do polling of likely voters. And you probably hear that on TV, they poll Americans as a whole, but then they poll who is likely to vote. And that's really what campaigns and politicians are looking at. As Nathaniel Stinnett described it, GM does not try to market cars for 4-year-olds. Kellogg's cereal is trying to do that, but for car makers, they try to sell their product to people who buy cars and afford to buy cars. When people run for office, they're going to target their campaigns for their likely voters and the highest priorities of those voters. So it's a side note, and I kind of knew this, but Nathaniel didn't really crystallize this for me, is that when you vote, it's public record. Not how you vote, who you voted for, but when you vote, it's actually public record. And so far, this has been bad news for the environment. Because up until now, every politician knows that the environment ranks last. And so it's been kind of harder for them to prioritize this issue because it hasn't been a higher priority issue for voters. So underlying this here is that when you don't vote, politicians are not going to act on climate and the environment. So please be voting every election, for dog catcher, for every election. Because when you're a likely voter, they're more likely to consider you in the polls, and they're more likely to target you there too. So yeah, voting is just so important too. Nathaniel Stinnett also said this, which really blew me away. So the Environmental Voter Project, probably other groups, have identified 200 million registered voters in the United States. Well, how many people showed up to vote in 2016? Well, about 136 million. So that means that 64 million people stayed home. Many of these folks are folks, as we're talking about in a moment, who care about the environment. 64 million decided that voting was not a priority for them. So of these voters, of those 200 million voters, there's about 20 million that the environment is actually their highest priority, that they really care deeply about this issue, about the environment and climate change. Well, how many of those showed up in 2016? Well, about 10 million. That's about 50% right there. So 10 million people out of 20 million in an election that was decided by 77,000 votes. So more people that care about the environment and climate have to show up for the polls. So the voting bloc, we must do better. We must do a whole lot better. And as Ken keeps saying to me, hopefully that will change. It's got to change. Hopefully it's going to change here. And the polling is going up on this, but we've got to make this a priority looking at the last presidential election on this here. So what the Environmental Voter Project does, which is really fascinating me, is that all they're trying to do is push people to the polls. They don't tell them how to vote or who to vote for. It's just they're trying to push them to the polls to vote. They do this by three ways: identifying those voters who are saying that the environment is their highest priority, and then contacting them, trying to mobilize them here. And what they do too is that what happens is that they'll call them up and say, "Do you vote?" And everyone always says, "Oh yeah, I vote." And then when they voted, they said, "Well, we noticed you haven't voted in about 8 years." And peer pressure works. Is that showing that they vote, and so what they'll do is they'll make a commitment to voting, and they're making a habit of it too. So this is what you can do about that. Pledge to vote. Pledge that you're going to vote every election. Volunteer, get your friends and family to the polls, or work for groups like, volunteer for groups like Environmental Voter Project, or League of Women Voters, etc. And then be a loud and proud environmental voter. I'm voting, and we're going to be voting here too. And here in Oregon, we've had some success doing it. Now, Oregon's great because we make it very easy to vote. When you register your car or get a driver's license, you can do automatic voter registration, and we also do voting by mail in the states. There's no long lines, so it's pretty easy to vote here. And therefore, our turnout's really good on this issue. And it was really good in the last election. So for folks like myself that really care about climate change, what groups like Renew Oregon was telling us is that if you want the Oregon legislator to work on the environment, work on climate change, we've got to get our candidates who agree with us, we've got to get them elected. So we canvassed, we knocked on doors, we made phone calls, we made sure we got people to the polls to do that. So as a result, Oregon got a supermajority of Democrats, but also candidates who cared about this issue, cared about working on climate change, cared about the environment. And so Renew Oregon, what we did is we worked on a bill. It was called the Clean Energy Jobs Bill. A bill that would tax the largest polluters in the state, and then would take that money and invest it back into clean energy jobs, especially for rural, for minority folks, people of color, and also for the tribes, trying to do that to try to wean us off of fossil fuels. It was a great bill, and this bill actually passed the House in flying colors, 36 to 24, and it was because we voted, And we got our friends and family and others to the polls to do this. Now, in the Senate, we had the votes too, but some people decided instead of voting on this bill, they ran away from the state. And so we came up short.
We didn't have a quorum.
We didn't have a quorum to do it. Yeah, Oregon is different in that we have to have a 2/3 majority to conduct business. And so there was actually a group of senators decided to leave instead of voting on this bill. But we came very, very close. And the reason why we came close was because we voted and we got our friends to the polls. We were active here. So this was the slogan at the beginning of the year. And now it's kind of like we almost got it done in 2019. But hopefully we'll get it over the finish line. And Oregon's actually on par with other states with carbon pricing bills because in 2018, Massachusetts got it done through one house and Maryland got it done, but they couldn't get it through others. So oftentimes it takes more than one push to get these things through a legislator, but it takes active voters and active constituents to do that. So, but again, the bottom line is voting in every election. So the next one is, and this is very important too, oftentimes you're here, you gotta vote. And so we gotta probably have a group of friends saying you gotta vote, but then being an engaged citizen is not just voting every 2 years, it's being in regular contact with your members of Congress and state legislators and local elected officials. So regularly calling them, writing them, and lobbying your members of Congress and elected officials there too. So twice a year now, as a volunteer at Citizens Climate Lobby, I'll tell you more about them in a moment, I actually go to Washington, D.C. and lobby the staff members of Congress, and I try to take as many constituent comment forms with me as possible. And just to ask you guys, which offices do you think I enjoy lobbying with more, the Republican offices or the Democratic offices? Which offices? It is true, because actually, believe it or not, I enjoy the Republican offices more. The Democratic offices, I mean, it may seem like we're more agreeable, but when you go to them, they're like, well, nothing's getting done here. The Republicans aren't going to do anything. You know, I tried years ago. It's just a very hard push here. And you kind of leave those offices feeling like this. But when I go in the Republican offices, such as, I was from St. Louis, I'm a Republican member of Congress, the staff would tell me, they say, look, Brian, we like you. We like what you're doing. But we need to hear from constituents. Our district is deep red. And our current president won this district handily. We won handily. We need to hear from constituents because they're scared about getting too far in front of their voters. So I feel like that's fair marching orders. They need to hear from folks here too. So what happened then, I go home and then and I'll tell you more about this in a moment. Well, I don't like to contact her, but the offices will tell you behind closed doors that they get climate change. They know it's real. They know the science is happening. They're really scared about getting too far in front of their voters and also their donor base. So that's where it's still important to contact your members of Congress and your state legislators, even if you feel like you disagree with them and they disagree with you. And so what I do is, and I do this all the time, is I write letters, and I try to vary it up so they're not hearing from me constantly, but like every other week, I call and write the governor.
So, a bulletin board.
Yes.
Has the bulletin board come up yet?
Yeah, the bulletin board's coming up yet.
Oh, okay.
So I rotate between the governor of Oregon, my state legislators, the members of Congress. I rotate around, but I call them and I post it on social media, so maybe help other people get the idea to contact their elected officials. And I've actually had some people take me up on it. This one guy in St. Louis said, yeah, I'll write to my members of Congress also. I don't really know this guy, but he took me up on this. And then this gal in Oregon, I've never met her, I don't know who she is, but she said, yeah, Brian, I'll take you up, and I'll write to the governor here also. And so it's great, so it's peer pressure works, getting that message out there. And, for me, making that phone call to the member of Congress or state legislator, it takes about as much time as brushing your teeth. It's really short amount of time, but you'll feel so much better afterwards doing it. If you get a chance, this book I'm reading right now by Mary DeMocker, she lives up in Eugene, and she started off her book saying this. She said, if our choice is to scrub out our peanut butter jars for recycling or to call your senator about a key climate change decision, it is more effective and more important at this point to just throw out the peanut butter jar and call your senator. You know, choose system change over climate change. I posted this on social media, and oh my God, you would lose the pushback I got.
We are committed to washing out those peanut butter jars.
We commit to living recycling
It
bin.
is my identity.
And you know, if you follow me home, I've got a whole shed full of plastic tags. I'm trying to figure out what to do with. I'm committed to recycling. It's just, Mary's trying to say, if you got a choice between one or the other, please call. So I had to enrich, I had to make my own, where I'm scrubbing up the peanut butter jar. And to show that yes, you can do both. You can scrub the peanut butter jar. Just in case anybody's worried, I'm putting out peanut butter jars there too. So, I've had so much fun getting to know my elected officials, and they've had fun getting to know me. My friend in Florida, Greg Hammer, he says, do you know who your elected officials are? And more important, they know who you are. Which I think is great advice, to know who you are. So I've called enough, and I'm always friendly, I'm always polite, and I've written enough that they kind of know who I am, because I went to see last February my state representative, Diego Hernandez, and he loves to put his letters from constituents on the board, and when I went, it was covered with mine.
So there's room for others,
There's room for others, yes. But there's actually a TED Talk by a guy that used to be a state rep, and he's passed away since then, but he was no longer an elected official, but he still kept the letters from his constituents, and made a big deal for him. So yeah, it does make a big deal to write and call there too. So I had to create this because I got really tired of this. So I just put this out there on social media. I said, when I lived in Missouri, people would tell me, I don't contact a member of Congress because she won't listen to me. Then I moved to Portland. People said, I don't contact a member of Congress because he agrees with me. And I just said, would you please just contact your member of Congress? It's the only way we make a difference on climate change, immigration, and other issues that we care about. So this is one of the things I've been saying. This is one of my mantra that I've been saying now for over 20 years. Each and every one of us can change the world. We do this by the products we vote, the way we vote, the products we buy, and the attitudes we share with each other. So that's the next section there. I did the wrong one here, Ken. I was going to do this to show. I really messed this up.
Stop.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. So my next one on here is, am I doing pretty good time here?
Yeah, so there's about 10 minutes left.
10 minutes left, okay. So have a specific ask. This is on the next level down. You know, number one, 15 minutes left? Okay, great. Have a specific ask when you contact your member of Congress. And because that really helps them. So for me, it's all about, we've got to put a price on carbon here. So I think it's going to be so important to put a price on carbon, because if you're at the grocery store trying to decide between an apple that's grown locally and organically, or an apple that's grown in Chile, if that apple in Chile is more expensive, you're going to probably go more with that apple that was grown locally here and produced organically here. So I think it's so important that we're putting a price on carbon to make the local products cheaper than stuff that's flown in truck from halfway around the world. So as Al Gore likes to say, we need to put a price on carbon in the markets and a price on denial in politics. You know, holding folks accountable. Economists across the political spectrum, whether they're super liberal or very conservative, they will tell you that we should tax what we burn, not what we earn. You know, we should be taxing pollution. So we should really be taxing things we don't like, such as pollution, as opposed to taxing income and things, those things here. Taxing the bad stuff. And that's how we got people smoking less. I saw this thing on National Geographic. It was a graph on National Geographic, this was a National Geographic about 4 years ago, that in the early 1960s, close to half of the U.S. population smoked. And you guys probably remember that, in the 1960s. If we were having this meeting here over 50 years ago, probably 50 people in this room lighting up a cigarette. We're not. If anybody But in the general meeting of the American population 50 years ago, probably people smoking. And we wouldn't have liked it, but it's like, well, people do it. Now, if anybody even would even think about it, we'd be screaming at them to head outside. You ain't doing that in here. So our social norms change, but economists will also tell you it changed also because cigarette taxes went up. It just got more and more expensive to smoke. You know, the cost-benefit analysis is that it's really expensive. So yeah, there's still people doing it. It's close to 20% of the population, but it's not like it used to be because the norms changed, but it's also expensive because you know you're going to be paying those cigarette taxes there. So carbon pricing is happening more and more globally, which I think is really exciting. Here, there's 46 countries worldwide that do have a price on carbon, whether it's what's called cap and trade or a carbon fee and dividend. And there's 57 of them that are kind of cross countries and 30 within countries. So it's happening globally, even with countries in like China. We think of China as polluting, but China is trying to put their own price on carbon to reduce their own pollution. And close to over 20% of the global carbon emissions worldwide are greenhouse gas emissions. That's actually greenhouse gas emissions. Now a price on carbon on. Now it's too low, we have to keep ratcheting it up, but we're starting to price this more and more. So it's happening. So what we have to think about as Americans is, with this carbon pricing train, do we want to be the engine or be the caboose? And the caboose means that when we want to ship our products more overseas, there's going to be carbon tax on it. Or do we want to be the engine that's pushing this policy and it helps even more of the world come along with us and we get to set the policy more? So carbon pricing is happening. So I volunteer with an organization called Citizens Climate Lobby. They're nonpartisan. We work with both Republicans and Democrats to get what's called a carbon fee and dividend bill passed. And so you would charge a fee at the source, the coal mine, the oil well, or the port of entry, and then you have this big pot of money, and then you return it all to Americans in a monthly dividend check. That's basically spread out evenly among all Americans. Every single American adult would get a check, and then half amount for children 18 and under. And so we like this policy because it's effective, it's bipartisan, it creates jobs, it's good for people. And we like it because it would reduce pollution, carbon pollution, by 40% within 12 years. So we like it because economists and scientists will tell you it's simple, comprehensive, and effective. It creates over 2.1 million jobs over 10 years. 70% of our economy is actually consumer spending. So when you put money back in people's pockets, what are they going to do? They got more money for health care, got a little bit more money to go out to eat, to buy a few things. And so, yeah, it puts money back in people's pockets so it actually grows the economy. It's not just helping out build even more wind turbine jobs and solar installers, but more people in the healthcare industry and other industries there too. So it really helps grow the economy. We do this because it's the humane thing to do to put a price on carbon, to reduce pollution. 114,000 deaths is estimated each year due to poor air quality.
In the U.S.
And that's just in the U.S. I think it's like 6 million worldwide. So it shortens our life, shortens the life of our loved ones, reduces their quality of life. So by putting a price, by switching to clean energy, making dirty energy more expensive, we're doing that much more for our quality of life. And so, when you put money back in people's pockets too, they're able to spend as they see fit, trying to have a policy that's actually more palatable for conservatives. Bipartisan support, and I was just talking about this among some of you just a few minutes ago here. If you look at Republicans, millennial Republicans, below the age of 39, they strongly believe that we've got to act on climate change. So this is bipartisan, and our bill is actually bipartisan. We've got one Republican co-sponsor so far, but we have more, but we're working in a bipartisan way, and this does have bipartisan support. So we have a bill in Congress called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, and this slide's actually outdated now.
I changed it for you just a few days ago, but now it's outdated. The number's gone up.
62 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives for a bill, which I think is phenomenal to take. And there's other carbon pricing bills coming now because Congress is having this conversation. They're trying to have a smorgasbord of bills to hopefully get more representatives, and the Senate has to come along. The Senate did have a companion bill, this bill, last November, but they don't have that companion bill yet. But we're having more carbon pricing bills in the House, and so hopefully they'll be able to coalesce around something here. But this is really exciting.
Yeah, I see.
There's Francis Bruni. Francis Bruni of one so far. One, because it's been tough for them. Again, they're worried about their donor base and their voters. And so if you live in a Republican district, the best thing you can do is contact your member of Congress that you want them to make this a priority. That's the best thing you can do for me and on this issue here too. I consider it to be a great way of Christian witnessing. You know, is to talk to your conservative Republican member of Congress saying this is an issue for you and God's creation. And I brought with me here, I left it in my backpack, but I do have with me, I've got constituent comment forms if you want to, because I'm going to go to DC in November, and I love taking these. It's funny, they have a different conversation with you too, versus you showing up with a huge stack of letters. When you show up with a huge stack of letters, they're even that much more attentive to you. So I've got these if you want to fill these out here also. But something I like to say is that, and this is how I end a lot of my talks, is that the most important person who can make the biggest impact reducing the threat of climate change is the person actually sitting in your chair.
I'm working.
So how do I get back to the other screen here, Ken? I'm like, it's not cooperating with me here at the moment.
Something happened, and so where do you want to go?
Just back to that tree there. Oops.
The tree.
The tree.
Right, and that's the problem.
Oh, it's
Something happened in turning off all of that.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, long story short, we can go forward.
We can go forward, okay.
Right.
Because I've got pretty much the meat. There's a couple of things. Oh,
Right. So maybe you could just fly through those last.
fly through these here. So I've got these are kind of shorter sections right here. See, I was really impressed with the Tech Prezi system when it works well.
Yeah.
When it works well, you can actually kind of go in and out.
Something happened.
You guys are going to be forced to hear all these slides now, unfortunately. So another thing you can do is, if you've got the time to do it, is attend a town hall with your elected official. I love attending. They're a lot of fun. I just went for one with Ron Wyden, U.S. Senator Ron Wyden from Oregon about a week ago here. So why town halls in your busy schedule here? Well, it's a great way to have a face-to-face meeting with your member of Congress or with your state legislators on that level. Great way to have a face-to-face meeting with your elected official with the whole town involved.
I'd be interested to find out how many people have been to a town hall meeting. Okay. We'll get some hands up here.
Cool, that's great, that's great. Hopefully we'll reach the point where we get even more hands there.
My member of Congress chooses to do those on weekday mornings,
Oh, yeah.
and not
Yeah.
in towns that don't like him.
And there's a game to it there. Oh, yeah, so I'll definitely get that also. So some of them, like my member of Congress in Missouri, didn't have them all. But so okay, you're going to hear from me anyway. In my letters and phone calls and from my friends there too. So yeah, some of them just don't have it, but those who do have it, it's a great way to promote climate action to your members of Congress and your community. And if you don't attend, they're still well attended either way. If you don't attend, others are attending. So for instance, I went there to promote Citizens Climate Lobby's Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act. And this is really cool. It was Portland. There was a sea of people there from the Sunrise Movement supporting the Green New Deal. And I thought it was great that they were there, but they were there to support the Green New Deal, which is just still in the resolution stage of working on climate change, where I actually have a specific bill that Ron Wyden go back to Congress and have him support. And so if I wouldn't have been there, he would have had this conversation, a two-way conversation just about the Green New Deal. And he was actually telling them, he says, look folks, this is just a resolution at some point. I'm trying to do something more concrete. And I'm in the audience saying, I know, I got something more concrete for you. So it was a good thing I showed up with my wife. They did a lottery ticket system, and she was called, and she was not going to be speaking in front of 200 people, so she handed the ticket to me. So this is how, one of the ways you learn, if you're a member of Congress or elected official is or is not doing town halls, there's a great website called townhallproject.com. And you can kind of keep tabs, and I believe they'll contact you also, but you can scroll on there. They also do it for at least 10 states for their legislators. You can find out when your state legislators are doing town halls. So that's how I keep tabs on it to go. Also, if you subscribe to their to their newsletters. They'll send you emails when they're doing town halls. So I get this from Ron Wyatt and Jeff Berkeley, my member of Congress. If you can, and I know that they do this at odd times, but if your schedule permits, I'm trying to get there an hour early. And when I've gone for like my U.S. senators, what often happens is that they do the questions by lottery tickets, where they hand you a ticket at the beginning, and oftentimes I'm not called. Piece of cake. I enjoy talking to the congressional staff. You can just walk right up and talk to them. And the congressional staff is great because they're really friendly. They want to hear what's going on. The congressional staff has the ear of their boss. So for me, I don't care not if I get a direct question. Yeah, I'd like to be able to talk to them directly before, afterwards, the senator. But for me, it's very important to have that also that conversation with the staffer. And then find out the doing questions. Is it lottery ticket? Is there a microphone like this that everyone can kind of line up behind? So you can find out how they're doing questions in case you do get a chance to ask a question. But then if you get a chance to ask a question, this is kind of my strategy. Start with your name, where you're from, show gratitude to them, share your elevator climate story. So I'm involved with a group called Citizens Climate Lobby, or you can also go as a Mennonite. Just say, hey, have you heard of Citizens Climate Lobby or heard of the Mennonites? Briefly explain about your group, maybe a bill that you're supporting or you're against, and then ask them to co-sponsor it. So that's how I do it. And so this is kind of how I've done it for recent town halls. Hi, my name is Brian, I'm from Portland. You know, I thank them for doing these town halls because a lot of them don't do the town halls. So you can very at least thank them for doing the town halls, even if you agree with them on 99% of the issue, disagree with them there. I talk about how I saw it. Climate change as a park ranger at Crater Lake, as a park ranger, and then I pause and people go, oh, park ranger. But I want to add this. I don't care what your background is. Everyone has a compelling story. Whether you're a stay-at-home mom, a business owner, pastor, truck driver, all of us has a compelling story when it comes to climate change. So you got it. You got this. Basically what I share with you guys here today. Talk about how I saw climate change with more intense wildfires and lower snowpack. I volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby. So I kind of do a question within a question. So I'll ask the senator, have you heard of Citizens Climate Lobby? And so this is what Ron Wyden did in February. I go, oh yeah, they're the kids suing the federal government.
No.
And I go, no, that's our children's trust. But then I explain what so it helped me because they're trying to listen to so many questions that sometimes part of their brain gets tuned out. So I kind of want to get him focused again on my issue. So I talked about my bill and how it's effective, you know, kind of what I went through with you guys. And now there's 62 co-sponsors. We'd love for you to be the next co-sponsor. Would you co-sponsor this? So this is kind of how I do it for town halls. And bad town hall question. We probably have encountered people like this in real life, that they attack them. You know, you scumbag, why are you doing this in Congress, that kind of thing. That then the member of Congress kind of tunes out, long-winded, what's your point? Alienates the audience, you're not exactly going to win friends and influence people that way. No specific ask. I'm sure you've got people, what are you asking? You make everyone feel uncomfortable. And then you make the climate actually look bad. So just try to be positive and focused and have a specific ask with your town hall question. And this may be out of your comfort zone. As you guys can tell, I love public speaking. Not everyone's like this. My wife would not do anything like this.
This dude's fearless. I'm talking about him, not me.
So you may be out of your comfort zone doing this. And I totally get that here too. But this is the quote that keeps me going. But Maggie Kuhn, I've introduced her, Maggie Kuhn, before, the founder of the Great Panthers movement. Speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. So again, you got this here, folks. How am I doing?
We're about there.
About there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this a good stopping point?
This is a good stopping point, yeah. I mean, I've also got more about positivity. We can go over that some other time. But yeah, this is the main thing right here. Yeah, so there was a section I wanted to go through yesterday about rising above the negativity, and I wasn't able to get to it, so that's the clue about life too, is that the hope of second chances. So, for me, as someone who organizes on climate change, I feel like I get a lot of pushback from despair and negativism and hopelessness, and I just wanted to encourage us to find ways to rise above the negativity. I think one of the most inspiring stories I heard in my life was, years ago I heard, actually a TV commentator talk about this, how basketball great Michael Jordan, when he was a young boy, when he first really became aware of prejudice and racism and discrimination, he was very angry and upset about it. And he was talking about it with his mom, and his mom says something like, yes, that is the world that we live in, but you gotta find a way to rise above it. And I love that, finding ways to rise above it. And for me, I grew up in the Lutheran Church, and this is one of my favorite passages, and I think somebody else had mentioned kind of Philippians before too, is whatever's true, what is noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, whatever's excellent or praiseworthy, to think on those things, to try to think each day on those good things here too, amidst the suffering that we have in the world. And I like to, as a climate organizer, think about this also. The status quo wants to win, they're determined to win, they like things the way they are. And so when you come along and say, we need to change some things, they're going to try to put you down and say, no, that's not going to happen. And what gives me strength too is looking back at previous movements, the civil rights movements, the rights to trying to end slavery, women's rights movements, you name it. And in all those movements, people were telling them things are never going to change. Things are the way they are. And yet the hope the people at those had is that it is going to change. So this is a quote that I put up on social media whenever I encounter negativity. I push back with this, is that our political adversaries, or adversaries in life, want us to feel demoralized, cynical, and hopeless about taking action. Never give them that satisfaction. So that's something that I hope that this is a quote that lives way beyond I do. And when I first got involved in the climate movement, this was a quote that I heard that was like, okay, I'm in the right spot here. I was on the Citizens Climate Lobby call, and they started this call with this quote, and it was action is the antidote for despair. And this is one of the things I believe to the depths of my being, and I encountered this firsthand at a Citizens Climate Lobby meeting about 6 years ago. I led this discussion about, now we're going to do an exercise where we're going to write our member of Congress. And this one guy said, that's a total waste of time. And I said, let's just do it anyway. And we did it. It took a few minutes to write it out. And this guy flipped from night to day. He had this big smile on his face, this big grin, this brightness to him. And he goes, that was fun. And I could hardly believe it was the same person that did it. So to me, it just showed you that when you take action, and again, I got these amendments to fill this out because I will be going to DC and lobbying congressional offices in November, is that when you take action, you just feel better doing it in the moment here. And I also love this quote that I've heard within the climate movement here too, is hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. That when your hope comes from doing the action. And I heard this recently too. This was from Ezra Klein from his podcast. And I really needed to hear it. I'll be honest with you guys, I was very depressed this summer when the climate pricing bill in Oregon fell apart. I had a hard time getting out of bed this summer. So there's kind of a road to recovery that I'm going on. And so I heard this podcast just a few weeks ago, and it was like, oh, I just needed to hear this. Ezra Klein was saying that politics is ugly, and we all know that. All you have to do is turn on the radio or TV, and you're like, oh my God, what an awful situation. So we know that politics is ugly, but he said that being involved is very beautiful. And I love this, because I know from meeting state legislators, of meeting fellow activists, of being involved, it can be very beautiful, it can be very spiritual, it can be very uplifting of actually being involved and making a difference in this. Yesterday, it's like, well, what's the good news? I think this relates back to what we talked about yesterday. The good news is that climate change is not happening with an asteroid, or a huge mega Yellowstone volcano, or a tsunami. We're causing it. Therefore, we can reduce the problem here too. It's us. So the good news actually is that the comic strip Pogo, we met the enemy and it's us. So that means that we can do something about it here. Bill McKibben, climate organizer. This really gave me, as a soldier in this movement too, so much inspiration that if you get involved with working for climate action, very few people get to say, I'm doing the most important thing you do right now. If you join that fight, this is what you'll be saying. I just love that also. And then for me, it just comes from that background of being in national parks, of spending time in nature. I hope everyone here leaves just inspired from just being able to spend time on the beach, spend time in the woods, spend time with each other. But for me, all those years of working in the national parks. And then of course our family. I don't have any kids myself, our grandkids, the students we teach, my nieces and nephews. I always, for years, I end my presentation with this with my niece and nephew, that if we get this right, someday future generations, our kids and grandkids will say to us, thank you for saving our home. And again, I mentioned this yesterday, and I believe this strongly too, is that hope also comes from within. It's the most important person who can make the biggest impact reducing the climate change is the person actually sitting in your chair.